What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing, the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. I'm going to continue my conversation with you concerning the complete history of boxing. As we finalize our conversation with the bare knuckle era, we will speak on some stats, years and dates, situation and or circumstances that took place between the beginning stages of the bare knuckle era to the ending stages of bare knuckle era in the very beginning of padded gloves. We spoke about Jack Brockton's 7 rules of boxing, 1743. Those rules were implemented. No eye gouging, headbutting, ground and pound, no kicking in the groin, no stomping a man's head while he's on the ground. No eye gouging. Man must continue to go to the scratch of the line. London prize ring rules, 1838. It was revised in 1853. 21 rules. The first legal ban action, April 14th, 1743. Marquess of Queensberry rules, 1867. John Graham Chambers. 12 rules of boxing. There were 38 bare knuckle champions from 1719 to 1895. The first England's heavyweight champion, 1719 to 1730. We know him as James Figgs, who was a former swordsman. We know he had a protege, who was the 4th heavyweight champion of England, Jack Brockton. He was the man who come up with the 7 rules of boxing in 1743. And the 14th heavyweight champion, 1792, the first Jewish heavyweight champion, Daniel Mendoza, who would create the stand-up style in a defensive and offensive stance. You see, Daniel Mendoza was knocked out. He was pulled by his hair, slammed on the ground, and pound to submission. He wanted to better structure this sport that was very barbaric for its time. The first bare knuckle fight took place 1681. The Duke of Albemarle's Footman and his Butcher. The first glove contest took place October 9th, 1818. The last skin 2-ounce glove was utilized May 22nd, 1903. The longest bare knuckle contest took 6 hours and 15 minutes to complete. December 3rd, 1855, Jonathan Smith retired after over 175 rounds. After Fairy Creek, Victoria, Australia, losing to James Kelly. The longest glove contest was against Andy Bowen and Jack Berkey. 110 rounds, 7 hours and 19 minutes to complete. The contest would end in a draw because both Andy Bowen and Jack Berkey would break their hands. Andy Bowen was a black fighter. He participated in that contest originally as a coach, but when his charge got cold feet, he stepped in. Little did he know, it would be for 7 hours and 17 minutes. Andy Bowen would eventually die when he took on a fighter named Levine. He was hit and his head slammed on the concrete. He would die. Jim Mace, 35 years in the game. He was a bare knuckle fighter from 1861, 1863, then again 1872. Became champion 1909. After 73 years of his life, he would retire. There were 60 bare knuckle champions. The Americans, bare knuckle champion, John O'Sullivan and Patty Ryan. The contest took place February 7th, 1882. John O'Sullivan would become the very first American bare knuckle champion. John O'Sullivan would take on Jake Kilrain, July 8th, 1889. That would be the last bare knuckle contest in all of boxing. The first glove heavyweight championship contest was 5 ounces between John O'Sullivan and Gentleman Jim Corbett. The contest took place September 7th, 1892, and was known as the Carnival of Champions. It was a 3-day affair. The winner took all. New Orleans, 21 rounds. John O'Sullivan was knocked out. Gentleman Jim Corbett went home with the belt and all the money. John O'Sullivan left the ring with his head down, bleeding profusely, with no belt and no money. Bare knuckle heavyweights. There were 45 champions. James Figgs, 1719. To John O'Sullivan, 1892. 47 champions in glove matches from 1892 to 1986. James J. Corbett to James Bone Crusher Smith. 14 champions in the cruiserweight division from Marvin Campbell, WBC, 1980, to Ricky Parkey, the IBF, 1986. Evander Holyfield would become undisputed, first man ever to do it. The last man who would become the undisputed cruiserweight champion was Alexander Yusuf. Light heavyweight, 52 champions from Jack Root, 1903. The IBF champion, Bobby Ches, 1986. WBC champion, Dennis Andres. And Marvin Johnson, WBA. Murray Sutherland, 1984. Chung Pao Park. Middleweight champions, 53 of those men. From Nonpareil, Jack Dempsey, 1884. To Marvelous Marvin Hagler, 1986. You had 2 Australian champions, Jeff Smith, the Bayonne Globetrotter, Les Dorsey. He was an outstanding fighter. You had 5 local champions in the middleweight division. Vince Dundee, Ben Jeppy. He held the NBA and New York SAC championship. Eddie Babe Risco, New York SAC. Freddie Steele would also have the New York SAC. You had Stanley Ketchel, who was a world middleweight champion. Harry Greb, the Pittsburgh Windmill. He would take the title away from Johnny Wilson in 1923. Jack Dempsey, Nonpareil, as we know. Theodore Tiger Flowers. Harry Smith, the Harlem Thunderball. He would own the colored middleweight championship title, which I considered a world championship title. Mickey Walker, the Toy Bulldog. Sugar Ray Robinson, who was the 3rd black middleweight champion in boxing history. Emil Griffith, who would hold that title twice. Marvelous Marvin Hagler. He was remarkable. Reigned from 7.5 years, 1981, 1987. I give him 1980. I believe he defeated a fighter who was from Brooklyn, New York, and Marvin should have been awarded that title. His name? Well, I'll save his name for last. Vito Anafirmo. I watched him many years. Gramercy's Gym on 14th Street. Lisa's Gym when it was on 30th Street, 7th Avenue. Bare knuckle welterweights. Patty Duffy, 1888 to 1890. Bare knuckle and glove contests. Mysterious Billy Smith, 1892, 1894. Mysterious Billy Smith would fight in the bare knuckle era as well as the glove era. Glove champions, Tommy Ryan, 1894. Lloyd Hunnigan, 1986. Matty Matthews, Eddie Conley, James Rube Firms, Frank Mentel, Ted Kid Lewis, Matt Wells, Jack Britton, the boxing marvel, Mickey Walker, the toy bulldog. Young Jack Thompson, who would become the third black welterweight champion in boxing history. Jackie Fields, Jimmy McLaurin, who was known as the Babyface Assassin. Barney Ross, Henry Armstrong, Hurricane Hank, would hold that welterweight championship crown. 19 title defenses. He was remarkable. From 1938 to 1940. Filthy Zivik, Marty Servo, Ray Robinson, and Johnny Bratton. Johnny Bratton was known as the Honey Boy. Ray Robinson was Walker Smith, as we all know. Carmen Basilio and Johnny Saxton. Tony DeMarco, Emil Griffith, Wilfred Benitez, Jose Napoles. Carlos Palomino, Thomas the Hitman Hearns, Donald Curry, Floyd Mayweather. Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. Oh, what such names. Mushy Callahan and Pinky Mitchell have something in common. In 1922, the junior welterweight division was created. Pinky Mitchell was the very first man to wear that title. You had Jackie Kid Bird and Tony Canzaneri, Tippy Larkin, and Johnny Jodick. Nicolino Loche, battling Shaw. Now Joe Gans, Frank Earn, battling Nelson, and Ad Wargas. Sammy Mandel and Al Singer, Henry Armstrong, Joe Brown. Carlos Ortiz, Bojack, Bob Montgomery, Ike Williams, but all have something in common. They would be the lightweight champions of the world. Joe Gans, as we know, was the first American athlete. He would be the first American black fighter to win that title. He would be the first black fighter in any weight division, coming up or down from any country or peninsula, to proudly wear that title. I think where many despised of Jack Johnson was because Joe Gans would hold that title from 1902 to 1908. He would defeat Frank Earn. 1908, the first black heavyweight champion, Jack Johnson, would defeat Tommy Burns. And he would hold that title to 1915. It was a sad moment for the establishment because you had the first American athlete, think about it, who was a black fighter, holding that crown from the beginning of the 19th century. When you think about Joe Gans, he would hold the title until 1908, and then the first black heavyweight champion would carry that throne as heavyweight from 1908 to 1915. So now you had the first black lightweight champion, who was the first athlete of America, and then the first black heavyweight champion, dominating all weights in between. And they happen to be black men. When you read between the chaos of what happened in 1910, Reno, Nevada, with Jack Johnson and Boilermaker Jim Jeffries, the destruction, the ability to manhandle one who was considered a superior race, this will affect those who entertain that theory. This is why you had hanging, lynching, homes being burned down. That's why you had the disrespect of man who did not look like one. This is when the black fighters began having problems. This is when we could not celebrate Jack Dempsey as we should, could not celebrate Gene Tunney as we properly should. We can celebrate Harry Grab, the Pittsburgh Windmill, as he would give the first black middleweight champion an opportunity, Theodore Tiger Flowers, 1926. You see, everything comes full circle when you look at boxing for what it truly is. 4 ropes were adding to the ring. They were used June 8, 1963, the first time 8-ounce gloves were used. A welterweight championship contest between Emil Griffith and Luis Rodriguez. 1949, you had 18 ring death. 1948, 14 ring death. Sam Baruti included. Unfortunately, he would die in a contest with Ezard Charles. 1962, 14 ring death. Benny Kid Perret included. Unfortunately, at the hands of Emil Griffith. 23 blows unanswered. The iron pole would cause the destruction of an already battered Benny Kid Perret. Benny Kid Perret was in the ring 6 months prior. As welterweight champion, he would face one of the most destructive middleweight champions, Gene Foreman of Utah, and he would take a battering. And when he would face Emil Griffith for the 3rd and final time, New York's Madison Square Garden, Benny Kid Perret would be placed up against the corner of his own. One of the punches of Emil Griffith was slammed ahead to the pole in the corner. That's what do the damage, and that's what was called the coup de grace. You had a young man, black fighter. They called him Eugene Dummy Hairston because he couldn't hear and he couldn't speak. He would be responsible, after hitting a man after the bell, for the red blinking lights in New York's Madison Square Garden. From that point forward, red blinking light has been used in Madison Square Garden, and then other states would pick up on it. March 17th, 1990, young man from the Olympics of 1984 would win a gold medal. He would become the junior welterweight champion. He would bring the IBF title to Las Vegas that he would win from James Buddy McGirt. In Atlantic City, I was at that contest. Julio Cesar Chavez had a title that he brought into the ring. Juan Koji was unavailable. He had the WBA, Chavez had the WBC, and Meldrick Taylor had the IBF. These two would mix it up. The red blinking lights that was implemented from the fighter, Eugene Dummy Hairston, was not utilized correctly, in my opinion. Referee was Richard Steele. Spoke about that bout many times. Dummy Eugene Hairston was a black fighter. He'd faced Jake LaMotta and others. His locker was 7 lockers away from my dad in Stillman's gym. My dad was one of few men who would somewhat socialize, if you will. We'll call him Eugene Hairston because that's his name. Eugene Hairston was so disrespected from the ignorance of man who didn't understand, a man who couldn't speak, a man who couldn't hear, a man who was black. My dad was just about one of few individuals who socialized with him in whatever capacity he could. You see, boxing has a very interesting way of expressing itself. Doesn't need the help of promoters, doesn't need the help of loan sharks or the mob. There was a fighter named Ike Williams who was controlled by the mob. Ike Williams was the second black unified and undisputed lightweight champion. 1945, he would win the NBA title from a Mexican fighter named Juan Zarita in Mexico, who stopped him in 2 rounds. He was highly disrespected, had half-eaten sandwiches and many stains from different kinds of beverages placed upon his body and trunks. And Ike Williams would then take on Bob Montgomery of Philadelphia, 1947. He would stop him in 6 rounds. He would win a New York sack, title that was earned from Bob Montgomery, from Bojack. Bojack would pick up that vacant strap. Sammy Mandel would retire. Bojack would defeat a fighter of New Jersey. His name was Ali Stoltz. That would put him in line to take on Tippy Larkin, who was the #1 contender of Sammy Mandel, Sammy Ain't Sammy Ain't Sammy Ain't was supposed to face Ray Robinson. He did. But the title was not on the line. I'm not going through that story again. No, Ray Robinson was not ranked #1. Many don't know the original story. So Bojack would then take on Tippy Larkin, stop him in 3 rounds. That was an upset because Tippy Larkin was looked to face Ali Stoltz, both from New Jersey. There's a lot of money on that contest. But Ike Williams would now become the second unified, undisputed lightweight champion. He was the second black fighter to own that distinction. First one was Joe Gans. There is so much rich history. Jimmy Carter, until this point in boxing, is the only 3-time lightweight champion. Pernell Whitaker, one of the greatest lightweights of all times. My point is, boxing is a conversation that will never end. There's so many things that took place in that sport. You had George Dixon, a Canadian bantamweight, Canadian featherweight. George Dixon, as we know, would be the first athlete, boxer, football athlete in general, to win a crown overseas, defeating Nuke Wallace. The first fighter of America was Bill Richmond. Second was Tom Molyneux. First trainer of America was Bill Richmond. He trained Tom Molyneux. Tom Molyneux was the first fighter of America to fight for a title. I just wanted to give you some information on what's important in this game. We talked about Lynn Johnson, how he made it possible for Black England fighters to fight for titles. We talked about the Turpin brothers. They were the first to win a title. We spoke about Frank Brunos and Nigel Benz, Chris Eubanks, Cornelius Boza Edwards. We spoke about Anthony Joshua and how important it is for them to truly learn their history. I believe if they learn their history in its truest form. Their decision and how careers were utilized would be different. There was a time when they would never be opportunized, if I'm making up words as I speak, have an opportunity to fight for a title. I don't know if they knew that. I don't know if they ever knew the money that they're making would have never been possible. I don't know if they ever knew. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As for American fighters, pulling teeth to unify divisions, to become undisputed, is a sin within itself. Celebrating because a fight has finally been made. Study your history and you'll understand. It's almost comical because this is a game that gets you out of situations on a financial, monetary level, and an economic level. When you look at Tom Molyneux, he tried to fight for a title. He was railroaded, if you study your history. When you look at Martin Luther King, when he says, I may or may not get there with you, we as a people will make it to the promised land. The promise he's referring to, 40 acres and a mule. Floyd Mayweather, on a monetary level, had made it to the promised land. But when you look at fighters who want you to understand boxing in its fullest conscious level, you look at them and you're confused. Deontay Wilder, regardless of what you feel his fighting style is equivalent to, regardless of what you feel that he didn't fight the quality of fighters that you feel he didn't fight, regardless of whether or not you feel he complained about being jobbed, one thing you can say with this young man, on a conscious level, he is free at last. And this is what boxing is about. Any nationality has opportunity. As long as you put in the work, as long as you come in prepared, you should not be stagnated. You should not be held out. You should not be denied of opportunities. You should be given every opportunity that everyone else receives. This history of boxing lesson should tell you that. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, the Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. All great fights, all great fighters would never be forgotten on my channel. Shout out to Muhammad Ali. Shout out to Henry Armstrong, Ray Robinson, Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano. When you look at Black Murderers Row, yes, we look at Sam Langford, Harry Wills, Sam McVeigh. We look at Iron Man of Hoboken, Joe Jeanette. We look at Harry Smith, the Harlem Thunderbolt, Jack McVeigh, the Pride of Harlem. We look at fighters such as the Joplin Ghost. We look at men, George Godfrey, Leaperville Shadow. Yes, we look at Holman Williams, Charlie Burley, Coco Kid. We look at Archie Moores and Izzy Charles. We look at Henry Armstrong, Ike Williams, Bo Jack, Bob Montgomery, California Jackie Wilson, Willie Joyce, Emil Griffith, Rocky Marciano was a devastating puncher. Willie Pep, Will of the Wisp, could box your ears off. Jim McLarnin, the babyface assassin, who had a move, jab, dance from side to side, put away his idol in the 6th round. His name was Benny Leonard, made a comeback in 1932. He retired in 1925 because of the 1929 stock market crash. He would make a comeback. When he retired in 25 because his hands were broken in a Lou Tindler fight, 22. And he promised his mother that he no longer wanted the box because it didn't make her happy. When you look at fighters like Maxie Rosenblum, Harry Greb, the Pittsburgh Windmill, Jimmy Slattery, who would face Dave Shade, Buffalo, New York. One of the most iconic contests that many don't speak about. Boxing has its history. Yes, it has its faults, but it has its history. Thanks for listening. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series, stating all great fights, all great fighters. Never be forgotten on my channel. Peace. I want to make one final point. I want to give a shout out to Devin Haney, the Dream. He's the first 4-time undisputed unified champion. He did it in foreign country, and he defended it there. That is a special moment. I want to give a shout out to Georgie Benton, who's the mayor of the Crab-like Defense. He would bring several men world championship status, including the Olympic team in 1984. I want to shout out to Manuel Stewart, who would train the 1984 Olympic team. I want to give a shout out to Muhammad Ali, who would not only become a 3-time heavyweight champion, but he would bring consciousness to a community in which he served. Marvelous Marvin Hagler, Sugar Ray Leonard,